Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone's had a great lunch and ready to take part in the third session, out of which the first breakout session is on transforming productivity in agriculture. My name is Rajiv Panditage. I will be the moderator for this session. Firstly, couple of the few topics that we want to address today is how do we transform our agriculture sector into a more dynamic, ever-present agriculture sector. What are the policies that will drive that growth, and what kind of technology can we bring in, and also how do we increase the agri-based exports from about 20 to 30% by 2030. Firstly, I have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Harish Chandra. He is the Executive Director of Deloitte India. He's in a strategic advisory for government and private clients, driving innovation and growth in agriculture and allied sectors, with over 21 years of experience across the food value chain. He has performed diverse roles in strategic planning, project implementation, operational excellence, business development, digital transformation with government agencies. He has a postgraduate diploma in management rural from Xavier Institute of Management in India, and a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture animal husbandry from Govind Ballabh Pant University of Agriculture Technology in India. So may I take the pleasure in inviting Mr. Harish Chandra to address the gathering. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. First of all, thank you for the invite and beautiful introduction by Rajiv. So next 15 minutes, I would want to take you through a journey that we are doing along with one of the state governments in India. So to set the context, basically on how do we increase the productivity, which is the essence of today's discussion, and also how we bring transformational growth in the areas of agriculture, animal husbandry, fisheries, and dairy sector. So the idea was that one of the state governments wanted to make a threefold increase in their current GDP and GVSA product that they have. And with that, a deep dive of the complete state's economy was done. The 1 trillion that we are seeing is for a particular state, slightly larger than the geography of Sri Lanka. All the sectors, both primary and secondary, manufacturing, everything was considered, and a deep dive was done to arrive on what are the strategies, what are the key enablers, and what are the key activities that we need to do for a period of 5 years to achieve 1 trillion as an economy of the state. So when I talk today, I'll be talking standalone for the primary sector, leaving apart the mining and the forestry. So agriculture, animal husbandry, fisheries, and poultry are the areas where the intervention is being done. So as I said, one sec. So as I said, the 3/4 of the 3 times of the growth that is envisioned under the $1 trillion economy, 3.5 times is expected from the primary sector, and out of that, agri and allied sector alone will contribute close to 2x. So we are currently at, okay, sorry. So the economy in agri sector alone is growing at a 10%, and we want to take it at a journey of 16% to 20% to make it 158 billion USD by 27-28 financial year. So if you see, we started off this project 2 years back along with the government involving all the stakeholders, governments and privates. And we have been able to achieve last year's target of 74 billion USD, which if you see, and then this year we are targeting at 90 billion USD, which we are, another 2 months there, we should be able to achieve that numbers as well. Now, there are 2 growth areas that we have taken. One is business as usual, which is growing at 10%, and the transformational journey that we are talking about will be at around 21-22%, right? Which is close to 52 billion USD over and above what business as usual will bring. Now, why this is important, transformational is important, is because there are sector-specific focused initiatives that we wanted to drive to achieve those numbers. Now, there are 8 levers that we're talking about that would help us to achieve those numbers. So, how do we use the agri-tech? There's a lot of buzzword happening around the agriculture technology which is there. How do we increase the adoption of precision farming? How do we create e-commerce platform? How do we use blockchain, IoTs, others? And how do I create enabling policy for a larger adoption in the state is one of the areas that we want to focus. Logistics is very important, not only for domestic consumption, from production hubs to the consumption hub, but also for exports. So a lot of planning around cold storages, pack houses is being done to create infrastructure which is suitable for movement of commodities from one geography to other. Micro-cluster development. So micro-cluster development is not only part of developing the infrastructure, but it is also in regard to development of various crops that will help in developing those clusters in a cohesive manner. Demand and marketing ecosystem. So demand generation, producing what is being demand, and an ecosystem for domestic and export market will be done. Capacity building of farmers collective, we call it as farmers producer organizations in India, which is nothing but a collective of farmers, of 1,000, 2,000 farmers, which collaborate together in an area of 2,000 or 3,000 hectares to produce of common interest, so that their bargaining power both at the back end and the front end increases while buying of the inputs and selling of the outputs. Micro entrepreneurs promotion is very important. Like a lot of smallholder farmers, a lot of small enterprises are there, and the food processing industry is essentially driven by micro enterprises. So a lot of policy enabling ecosystem is being developed from incentivizing for investment in the sector. Capacity building, of course, it requires a lot of change management. There are thousands of initiatives which are being driven at a point of time. So change management from the people who are going to implement this scheme altogether across the states. As I said, it's a huge geography. There are over 100,000 people employed who are working to build their capacities, and in turn build the capacities of the people who are going to implement these schemes is going to be critical factors. Now again, there would be money required to drive all the activity or transformation of this stage. So apart from the state government's own budget, central government's fund, schemes and incentive structures which are available within India, we would also wanted to leverage the international funding institutions like World Bank and ADB for not only for funding, but also helping in the implementation and also in the evaluation of how the activities are going, whether they're on track or not. Now, those were the critical success factors. Now we'll be talking about the key strategies in agri and allied sector. So what we have said is we want to increase the crop yield, right? How do we do it? There are various initiatives for improvement of crop yield, from investment in the research and development, investment in improving high-yielding varieties, introduction of precision farming, making accessibility, the seeds availability to the farmers for the crops that they want to grow. Beyond that, if you want to grow intensively, we don't want to exploit the condition of soil. So climate resilient crops, varieties, and also package of practices that would help enable the sustainable production systems, like balanced use of NPK, fertilizers, pesticide. Introduction of farm machinery is one another area. So digital technology, physical technology, backed by right policy is the area that we want to focus upon. So when I say physical technologies, the size of the farm holding is similar to what is there in Sri Lanka, right? On an average, farmers will have one hectares or less than 1 hectares of land holding. So usage of machinery becomes really a challenge. So one of the areas that we're trying to do is, as I said, creation of farmers, producer organizations for a collective farming. Second is create an Uber model of renting of the farm equipments, from large equipment to small equipments, so that one doesn't invest in the cost of the machineries, but also is able to use it. And by collective farming, the area under acreage increases by mechanization. And there's proven records wherein use of farm machinery or farm irrigation systems helps boost in the productions of or better utilize of the resources and increases the production of the crops. Crop diversification, not only in agri, but in horticulture also is a major area where we want to drive. So crop diversification, now we are at a stage where we are self-sufficient in food security. Now, producing this routine cycle of wheat and paddy is there where we have already achieved what we wanted to achieve 30, 40 years back. Now, how do I make my production system move from the sustainable farming to a commercial farming? So we are trying to move the crops, growing of crops that are cash crops in nature, spices, horticultural crops, flowers, fruits, and vegetables, not only for the domestic purpose, for the export purposes also. So when we increase the productivity, we need infrastructure to be available, not only logistic infrastructure at the farm gate is very important to reduce the losses, post-harvest losses. So a lot of investment and PPP mode of interventions are being worked out to create a model where all the stakeholders have equal play and create an infrastructure for the farmers to sell their produce at the right price. Processing, we want to increase the current level of processing. The export market becomes lucrative when we increase the processed food in the value chain, right? So from 2 to 3% meager processing, we want to take it to 20 to 25%. And for that, a lot of incentive structure is being offered for the investors, small and large scale people to come and invest in the state to create infrastructure for processing. So yield improvement is one in the dairy sector that we want to focus. Yield improvement by sorted Siemens, by breed improvement, by bringing the hybrid cattle, by digitizing the data collection, one of the areas which is crucial, by mapping all the animals which are there across the states beyond cow and buffalo that are milch animal to increase the area, to increase the productivity. Now processing, unlike other states in the country, is less in the state that I'm talking about, and then we want to take it to 25%. So milk processing and value-added products that comes out from the milk is going to be the key enabler for enhancing the GVA in the dairy sector. Adoption of dairy technology and creating a right policy system for your dairy cattle management and farm management is one of the other levers that we are trying to improve to bring the productivity enhancement. When we come to fisheries, so there are a lot of water bodies which are there in this state, right? Mapping of those water bodies and use it for commercial purpose has not been done. So we are initiating an activity where the current coverage of 30% is going to increase to 70, 80% of the water bodies on a commercial production of fisheries. Introduction of new varieties of fishes moving from traditional carp production to fungasious and introduction of shrimp cultivation in the area is going to be the critical success factor in this fisheries sector. Poultry has been negligent. The state has been primarily importer of poultry, both in terms of chicken as well as eggs. Now, through PPP mode and building the capacity of the farmers through capacity building, training programs, investment in the infrastructure, we are trying to make the state self-reliant in the poultry production, and over a period of time, the idea is to also export. So these were the key strategies across the animal and animal health sector. Beyond that, there are a set of activities that are being carried out. So how the complete process is mapped is, there's a success factor, there are key strategies. These slides that you see in front of you appear to be more operational in nature, but then they are cumulatively going to help us in achieving the overall target that we're talking about. So I'll not get into detail of it, but seed ecosystem is one of the areas that we're talking about that we should focus. If I have to increase my productivity, to have right amount of investment in the R&D, to have seed production ecosystem developed, to have varietal improvement in the open pollinated crops, and have high yielding varieties, climate resilient seeds. That is what is needed when I have to improve my yield. So that is what we are trying to do under seed ecosystem. Agri-technology, how do I leverage agri-tech? So when I say agri-tech, it's both accumulation of physical and digital technology, as I said earlier. For physical technologies, we are talking about farm mechanization, what products that can I bring in India or in the state that are relevant and suitable for the agroclimatic conditions, topography of the land, and the size of the land holding. That is where a lot of investment is going to happen. We are working on agri-tech policy, data exchange platform. Thus, we are creating a pool of data of farmers, crops grown, areas, and varieties that are grown that will not only be used for the departments of the government, but also for the other stakeholders to take enabling decisions. In that, we are also trying to create a sandbox for the startups to come and start operating or experimenting with innovative products that they have in mind. Crop diversification, I already talked about. From wheat, paddy, we want to move to maize, oil seed, pulses. We are net importer of oil seeds. We are importer of pulses. So we want to be self-reliant in those areas. So there are specific crops, specific schemes that are being launched in order to help farmers or encourage farmers to produce and move to from paddy to those crops. So in order to promote horticulture, in essence, we are trying to increase the cropping intensity. How do I increase the cropping intensity? Is primarily do more of intercropping. Intercropping is only possible when I start growing horticulture crops, including flowers and vegetables and spices. Again, these crops, we want to grow as an intercrop to the main crops without disturbing the intensive targets that we have taken in seeds, oilseeds, pulses, and other crops. Again, bringing technology, high-tech nurseries, assuring quality nursery seedlings to the farmers for growing the crops will be critical, and horticulture-specific technologies in terms of physical, that is farm machinery, is where the lot of thrust is being given. We are reworking on the agricultural export policy. There's a vibrant policy which is there that encourages people to export. It's not just the policy, but also creating infrastructure like irradiation facility, special export zones, food parks are being created so that farmers have access to those markets and they are able to export. So capacity building of farmers in dairy. Then there are dairy cooperatives are there. A lot of dairy cooperatives are defunct. We are trying to reactivate those by providing them access to captive market, by providing them, incentivizing them to increase their production capacities from existing 30 to 40% to 75 to 80% in due course of time. Fisheries, productive enhancement through, we are actually doing public-private partnership mode to build hatcheries, to bring new seedlings. There's a model of integrated aqua park where we are trying to create those aqua parks for inclusive presence of all the opportunities and facilities for people to invest, experiment, and scale up. Poultry policy, we are, in terms of policy, we are actually creating a new policy altogether which was not existent earlier to create an ecosystem primarily focused for investment in the state in the sector of poultry. So this is, I'm sorry I have taken more time, but this is how we are trying to achieve 158 USD by 28-29. We are there, the traction is happening on the right way. A lot of policy level interventions, a lot of capacity and training building, a lot of usage of digital technologies is being done to achieve those numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harish Chandra, for that thought-provoking presentation. Now, may I invite the panelists onto stage. Firstly, I would like to invite Dr. Tushara Vikramarachchi, Additional Secretary, Agriculture Division. Thank you for coming. I'm sorry, Mr. D.P. Vikramasinghe, the Secretary to the Ministry, could not attend today's session. Mr. Arosha Serasinghe, the Group Chief Executive Officer of CIC Holdings, he has over 25 years experience in the business sector, and he's also a chartered accountant. Please, may I welcome you to the panel. Mr. Manju Gunawardana, Group CEO, Research and Innovation, Lanka Oryx Leasing Company. He's a well-known personality in the agriculture sector and with over 25 years of experience. Welcome, Manju. And finally, Mr. Harsha Subasinghe, founder HS Agri Exports. He's a seasoned professional with extensive experience in the export and travel industry, currently serving as director of HS Agri Exports. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. First, some housekeeping. Firstly, I would like to encourage everybody to log on to slido.com. The code with 2439072, you can ask any question that you require. And also, there are 2 polls that are up on slido.com. Please answer the polls as well. And for our audience that is logged in online, you can put your questions out on the Zoom questionnaire for us to answer at the end of the panel discussion. So how I would like to run this panel discussion is initially I will ask a few questions where I would like for each member to answer. And thereafter, time permitting, we will have some direct questions. We would like to leave about half an hour to 20 minutes to answer the questions from the audience as well. So first of all, I will, under the topic of transforming productivity and agriculture, let me first answer the first question starting from Arosha maybe. One of the key drivers for the current government is to make 100 rural farmers to be entrepreneurs. What do you think the Sri Lankan agriculture sector, as well as the government and the private sector do to shift from a subsidy-dependent, self-sustaining global competitive sector, especially for our traditional crops that are prevalent in Sri Lanka? Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv. And firstly, thank you to the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce for inviting us to be on the panel. And Harish, wonderful presentation, good data insights from your presentation. Thank you for that. Rajiv, getting to your question, I think whether it's 100 or 200 or 50 or whatever, what's important is to really understand how many of the farming community can be made entrepreneurs. Meaning, I mean, today you have roughly about 25% of our workforce in farming, more subsistence farming, which contributes about 8 to 9% of the GDP directly, perhaps indirectly, a little bit more, to about 15%. So first, I think we need to do a proper scan of the environment that we have and why people get into farming. Some are in farming as a means of alleviating from poverty. A lot of them getting in the most rural areas, I think they want to get out of poverty, and this is one way of getting into farming. Now, immediately to get them to be entrepreneurs is a tough call, in my view. But there are those who are in the SME sector who have gone in with technology to an extent and who are willing to look at getting to the next level of farming. And I think this is the segment which needs to be targeted. But whereas the subsistence farming or those who are in terms of alleviating on the poverty side, I think there's a responsibility on all of us and more so on the government. I think there are programs such as Asfasuma. You need that safety net or the mechanism to safeguard them. But then looking at the other segment where you need to bring into from the entrepreneurial side, one of the key things is you first need to see logically, do they lack technology? Do they lack access to capital? Are they lacking, access to the market? And these are things where even private sector can get involved. I think there are a lot of even leading supermarkets who are working with some of the farming communities in trying to bring them up to the next level. And one of the key things in developing this segment is also changing the mindset. I think that basically is something reflective of all of us. Because I think one of my senior colleagues, he always keeps saying, even in our school books, when you see a farmer, what do you first see? You see a mamati and a loincloth, right? His reference is, I'll sort of translate that, Duppat Asarana Goviya. I mean, why do we have this mindset of poor farmer, right? Farming is just like any other business. So I think it's important to first have a mindset change on how we look at farming. You need to look at the business model. Farming is just like any other, business model. So we need to get them, and there are a lot of aspects, not only the private, but the public sector can also get involved. So my first thing is, I think we need to do a proper scan, look at who, whether it's 50 or 100 or 75, it's just a number. But amongst that, whom can we take to the next level of being entrepreneurs, and then looking at the gap analysis there and how to take it forward from there. So I just pause, happy to elaborate thereafter.
Thank you, Aroshan. On that same topic, I would pose this question to Dr. Tushara, if you don't mind. Part of my question was also, in transforming this thinking to make rural farmers, our farmers are used to this subsidy dependence and always the government supporting, whereas the entrepreneurial aspect is missing. Just also stemming from what Aroshan mentioned, how can we get the youth involved in this endeavor of the government, and also how can we get more modernization coming in with the youth intervention into this? What are the government's thinking on this side?
Yes, actually it is encouraging to see that the current youth are trying to come into the agriculture sector. They are willing to invest on the agriculture sector, but the basic career will be something else, but still they are trying to invest on the agriculture. That is the subsector of this agriculture development. Actually, that is now, as the Ministry of Agriculture, we have planned to attract this youth into the agriculture by providing several policy initiatives. Actually, one is the modernization. Modernizations, we have invested heavily on the modernization through different projects. That may be a soft loan or some kind of the grants. But still in the future, there are few projects yet to become. But their main target is the modernization, how this agriculture can be modernized with respect to the Sri Lankan, the landscape of agriculture. Then second thing, actually, the thing is the productivity. Productivity improvement is the must, because one of the challenge in the Sri Lankan agriculture is the low productivity. But we have taken several initiatives to go for the better areas, because the Sri Lankan, the agroecological, highly diverse agroecologically, but there are pockets, there are fields which is much suitable for the different crops. Now actually we are encouraging the invest on those areas for the crops, because we have a maize belt, we have a high rice producing areas, but we are, while encouraging farmers to go into that area, but our main projects, subsidies and other things are focused on these areas. Then third one is the research and development. Actually, that is the one of the neglected, I would say, because in terms of the investment of the research, it is in the Southeast Asia, it is the lowest investment for the research and development. But thing is, now private sector has come in forward to the invest on the R&D. That is one thing. Then this will be indirectly encourage the youth to come into this agriculture. And one other thing is, actually, we are taking forward that there are direct indirect agriculture components are there, climate, the carbon credits, how we can integrate this carbon credit into our day-to-day farming activities. That is one of the major things. Now actually the youths, they have forming companies, then they are going to invest on the carbon credit, but ultimately it will impact it on the agriculture, normal crop agriculture. They are the conventional, the model of agriculture will be transformed into the more sustainable agricultural practices, which will be impact on the the greenhouse gas emission. That kind of projects are coming now. Then Ministry of Agriculture, along with the Ministry of Environment, we are encouraging, because we are now giving consent and link the research institution, because one thing is we don't have a baseline data for this carbon credit investments. Therefore, we are now facilitating youths to come forward, and our research institutions are advised to help them, and they are willing to invest on this one. Therefore, the future agriculture will be more attractive, because we are trying to get in more involvement of the youth as well as women.
Thank you, Doctor, for that answer. Manju, just if you also may touch on the same topic, in order to be globally competitive, I think sustenance is required. So based on the same topic, in terms of youth and women empowerment and making the agri sector more attractive, coming from an innovative perspective, you know where you specialize in, what are your thoughts on the same topic?
Thank you, Raju. In my personal perspective, I think to answer the same question, it has to be a healthy balance between private sector activities and the government sector interventions. So in that balance, to convert a general farmer into an entrepreneur, the heavy weight still lies on the private sector. I can recall the programs done by my previous company, CIC, like Shurogovia. So we were in a position to convert a general farmer into an entrepreneur from very impactful manner, giving him technology, giving him new challenges, opening that person into a completely new perspective in agriculture. So it was a combination of a lot of things. And previous speakers, they discuss about different points, but all these points are equally integrated in this conversion. Number one, his financial support. With that finance, what is he trying to do was nicely consulted. The support, basically the teaching part of it, the extension played a huge role in agriculture to convert a general farmer into an entrepreneur. I'm taking this particular experience, I have gone through the Shurogovia. So that is the pathway to convert a general farmer into a much advanced farmer entrepreneur. Number one. Number two, how to attract the family members and the next generation into the same thing. How to lock them in that without letting them go and drive a trishaw. So it has to be a value added, or basically we should add something which is new and which is shining into their life, right? Instead of driving a trishaw, he should go and he should basically lock his mind to go and take it from his father and to take it into another level. That, the innovative inputs, technological interventions, smart agriculture concepts, then end of everything, the profitability improvement. I mean, is it profitable for me to let myself into this particular activity, instead going to Colombo and do something different? Those kind of pushes should come. Otherwise, we must be talking about it, but people won't put their fingers into it. Fathers will be doing it. I mean, they have been doing it, but the new generation won't come. The major importance is not to put fingers in the middle, but to start it from the beginning, how to empower then the continuous support and the policy support from the government. My balance is 80-20. 20 should come from the government, the rest 80, it is private sector involvement.
Thank you, Manju. Mr. Harishchandra, based on the answers that were given, you also touched upon the total ecosystem and how to make it attractive, access to credit and all of that. So based on the three answers you get, what are the best practices that you've seen out there in your market and in your travel around the region? What kind of policies should we bring in to attract this youth, to empower our people to move away from this traditional agriculture sector into a more modern sector? Yeah.
I think I'll echo with what has been said so far, that in order to keep the youth engaged in the farming, it has to be treated as a business rather than farming or calling them as a poor farmer. In order to do that, right, one is the way we grow, right, the crops that we are growing. They are traditional crops. So I look at it two ways. One is how do I increase productivity in the traditional crops in order to make it profitable, if it has to be a business driven, right? And if we have to drive entrepreneurship at the farm level, then how do I increase the productivity? And how do I produce more in per unit of land, or rather per unit of resources? So do I have bandwidth to grow cash crops, right? Crops that are, along with what we have been growing traditionally, let's say paddy, can I grow some spices, some vegetables, fruits that have got export potential? Now I think that's not alone. The complete ecosystem has to be developed in and around the farmers. So farmer has to be the centric point if I have to make a policy thing. So if I have to bring rural youth back to the villages, I have to provide enabling ecosystem in terms of right policy to help them in financially, right? If he has to move from traditional crop to, let's say, cash crop, right? Probably he needs cash to be invested, right? From where did the money come? Do I have insurance on the crops to take risk? Are we building enough capabilities around him to take the risk? Right? That's how usually a business would operate. Do I have options for insurance or not? Am I able to provide right infrastructure at the farm gate level? Do we have that option or not? How do we create it? That's where the role of a private player comes in. Farm gate infrastructure could be as simple as primary processing. It could be as complex as secondary or tertiary processing for that matter. Then third, how do I build capacities? If I have to export, are we competitive globally? In the morning we were talking about, are we competitive enough globally as compared to other similar countries? One. Secondly, are we compliant enough? There are a lot of regulations in terms of exports, be it fair trade, or it could be in terms of good agricultural practices. So we have to build capacities around that. So I would say, holistically, all the components will factor, and for that a cohesive policy is what would be needed to build them all together.
Thank you. So have you seen any policies that were executed effectively, and what are the kind of key barriers that were overcome in order to achieve such kind of success in your experiences in the ecosystem that you just mentioned?
So I think the biggest challenge is grounding of the project, right? And that's what I said. The capacity building is not only important for the end recipient, maybe for that matter farmer. So we all need to build capacities on the stakeholders who are there in the value chain, right? If my team that is going to empower those people is not qualified enough to train on, let's say, something as simple as GAP, probably the outcome will not be there as we are expecting. So capacity building of all the stakeholder is important, right? If you ask me examples, so let's say in India, a lot of organic honey is being produced, right? Which is consumed locally. All this while there was no market for it because it was locally procured by the farmers in the forest areas and it was sold locally. But past 3 years what has happened is few of the corporate players have gone, invested time, have got GI tagging done in the Himalayan areas, and then the procurement has started formally. The capacity building has happened. They have invested, government bought in policy of aggregation of those
through their FPO model that I said. And then now today, the lot of those products not only get sold across the country in India, but it goes globally also as organic honey.
Thank you for that. I will now move on to Mr. Harsha Subasinghe. You know, in the context of all the topics that were discussed, capacity building, increasing our productivity and all of that, how do you think, you know, Sri Lanka can expand its portfolio of value-added agriculture? And what kind of data-driven decision-making can be utilized in order to make sure there's visibility to the exporter in terms of the whole value chain? And how can we become more attractive to the export market?
Yes, so I'm going to suggest some centralized web portal. So integrate with the exporters, farmers, like suppliers and all the government bodies. So through that system, the exporters could be able to feed the database with the export requirement, and also suppliers and the farmers can easily access to get the accurate detail of the demanding of the export according to the time period duration. And so the system is integrated with all the government bodies. As example, EDB, Agriculture Department, so such government bodies, they could able to get the proper technology, and also the detail of the weather forecasting and what kind of varieties they can get to take to grow. And so they, through that all the accurate detail, they could able to get the high quality product, and also they could able to ensure the buyer, all of their crops, they have directly contact to the exporters to sell. Also through that system, it can be make the trustworthy network between the exporters, suppliers and farmers, so it can be avoiding the unnecessary scams. Part of that, to the system implementation like that, it can be avoid the over harvesting and under harvesting. So the exporter feed the system with all the requirements, and the farmers can get the proper details. So it can be avoid that kind of issues to the system.
Good. Thank you. Dr. Tushara, can I just direct this question at you, Doctor? What policies would encourage contract farming and direct farmer to market linkages, and how can Sri Lanka adopt these strategies and execute them effectively? And how can we leverage the PPP infrastructure and development, such as cold chains and so on and so forth? What do you think, what policies would encourage the private sector to come in as well?
Actually, when we talk about the agriculture, that is the private sector is integral part. Without private sector, no agriculture can be moved forward. Then actually, whenever our supply chain, the value chain is ours fragmented. It is not a full-fledged value chain. Therefore, we need private sector to come forward and help in the strengthening this value chain. It is there because we are trying private sector to come forward and invest in several ways. One is the productivity mainly depend on the quality of inputs we are put into the agriculture. Then one is the seed. Seed now we little bit liberated. Previously, seed business totally the state on. Now seed business has been privatized, especially vegetable seeds. Totally 80% vegetable seed is governed by the private sector, and regulation part will be kept with the government in order to provide the quality seeds. Therefore, and also we facilitate private sector to do the R&D. Then now some of the private sector have released their own varieties in Sri Lanka in the first time. Therefore, now there are many other private sector industry they invest on the R&D and come up with their own seeds and other products for this development of agriculture. Then actually the connecting farmers together, because we had the farm organizations, the cooperative societies, but through the Ministry of Agriculture project, we came with the new concept of public unlisted company. They are kind of the company, then farmers can involve themselves for investment, they are having the shares. Then we have success stories as well as failures, but we feel that the farmers should come forward as not the ordinary farm organization, but kind of the company. Then we can facilitate them to start and diversify their company. Initially, they are starting with the banana export. Then it is mandatory for them to, with the time period, they have to diversify their business by the selling inputs, then consultancy, then some kind of protected agriculture, this type of. Therefore, in future, the aggregation, integration of farmers together is very much important. Otherwise, this isolated the individual farmers, we cannot give many benefits for them. And also, in future, we are planning to give the support subsidy for production base, not initially for the extent base. Whenever they produce through the sustainable methods some kind of the X amount and Y amount, X amount will get the kind of the subsidy, the Y amount get the another subsidy based on their production and how far they have fulfilled and adhere to our new production technologies. Therefore, we want to encourage new technologies, new varieties, new fertilizers, and sustainable methods integrated into the farming community. Because it is not easy, we know it, but through this kind of attractive the models, we want them to come and invest on this one. That is how. Other thing is actually now we are planning to provide some kind of support through the projects, mainly through the projects, not to the individual farmer, but to the farmer community. Then they like or not, they have to make a community, then they have to show that their sustainability, then only they will be getting the benefits from the government side. Then we are always encouraging, and other things actually, most of this farming community, awareness is must. That is a very poor. Then if we go to the rural farming community, they don't know even what is the potential crops to be grown for the exportation, how to get connected with the buyer, how to get connected with the exporter. These things actually very weak in the ground level. Therefore, we have to have a kind of, that is, the government alone cannot do everything. That is what Mr. Mann, you correctly told, that private sector having very important things to play in this sector because they are willing to invest. Then here is the private sector community here. Then we humbly request, come forward. We are willing to help through this policy regulation part. And but farmer involvement, this benefit should percolate into the individual farmers through this farming community. That is very much required. Then we are planning for this one. Actually, now this time actually one other very good thing. This time government mobilized money, not keeping in the ministries. Ministries the agency for policy decision and coordination. Therefore, no much money is required for the ministry, but money is channeled to the provinces where the implementation is being happen. Now, we have connected with the provincial government and we are now facilitating them to start the project which will achieve the national goals. That is what in this year it will be a good initiative from the government side. The money, because provinces, they have their own setup. Then we are connected with the provincial government setup. Then the best project, agricultural projects for the province will be implemented through the facilitation from the ministry side.
Thank you, Dr. Tushar. Aroshan, I'll just extend that question towards the private sector there. I mean, CIC runs a great outgrow program in Polonnaruwa and so on. But what role can the private sector play in enhancing agriculture productivity and increase our competitiveness in the export market? And the second question is, how can the government better engage with the private sector to, support that ecosystem? Actually, doctor just mentioned that they encourage us to come, but what from the private sector side of things, what pointers can you give out to the government as to how can they really attract the private sector to come in and play in the whole ecosystem until the exports are sent out?
Thanks, Rajiv. To answer the question, firstly, I endorse Dr. Tushara's viewpoint, what he highlighted, and I must say, if I take the example of CIC, we work very closely with the Department of Agriculture. Case in point, our scientists, along with the knowledge and the scientists of the government, have developed hybrid vegetable seeds, corn, okra, brinjal, a few others, and this is successfully being rolled out. I mean, this is direct import substitution, if you look at it, in terms of saving of foreign exchange, but more so in enhancing that knowledge which is there with the government. I think over the years, before the private sector ventured into R&D, I believe that knowledge base, whether it's germplasm, various things, it was all lying with the government. It still is. So it's a matter of how do we partner in a meaningful manner to unlock that, to leverage on that, because we are sitting on essentially a gold mine. And in that, vegetable seeds is one. We are also working closely with the Coconut Research Institute of the government and so many other bodies in developing hybrid coconut seeds. Fundamental thing is improving productivity. It's productivity. I mean, if you look at it, Sri Lanka is an island, right? You're talking about 2.5 million hectareage, roughly. Give or take, out of that 2.5, regional plantation companies and paddy perhaps will take about 1 to 1.5 million. So you have 1 million hectares which you need to make the most productive use of that land. High yielding, not only high yielding, but looking at return on investment. Because as I said, farming is an investment. End of the day, whilst you safeguard certain elements, you need to make sure that there's a proper business model. So those are some of the key examples where we work with government. The other aspect as private sector and as CIC, what we have brought in is looking at the inputs, as you rightly mentioned. High quality seeds, be it hybrid or even internationally, where we work with our partners, have been made available to the farmers, again to improve yields and boils down to productivity. The other element is the crop protection and nutrition aspects, the agrochemical side of it. Again, working in a responsible manner, looking at class 3 and class 4, meaning class 3, class 4 means the least toxic fertilizers which are available in the world. Again, bringing that into a farming community. And one point, I think what Harish has mentioned, the sandboxing, protected agriculture, greenhouses and so on. I think that's a key area where we need to improve on. As CIC, one of our actually companies is looking at that sandboxing and looking at next generation fertilizer, the granular, slow release, and looking at agroponics and so on. So these are, few areas. We're working with a lot of people, but the second part of your question, in that ecosystem, I think we all need to integrate better. It's a value chain, no? End of the day, the public-private partnership working with the farmer. So it's public-private people. Now we also work with certain clusters. There's a program called Dallakin Venasak, where we work with farming communities. You create clusters to improve productivity. So the agronomy practices, the best practices are disseminated to them. From a policy perspective, I think one of the key elements is, I think we heard in the previous sessions also, the consistency in most of the policies. I think that's an important thing. I mean, today we talk of, there's a lot about subsidies, right? Having subsidies is one thing. In India, you have a subsidy, and I think it works very well through the ADA system, through digitalization and all that. So that's one element where you can bring in to Sri Lanka as well, where you avoid so many issues pertaining to whether that money is being used for the desired purpose and so on. That's through digitalization. But the subsidy, consistency of that subsidy policy also needs to be there, because that way you attract private sector, the existing parties, or even new companies to come in, because this is not something overnight. No? You have Yala season, Maha season, you have, agriculture is a long-term game. It's not like, you put in money and you get a return the next day. And to attract new people to come in, especially the youngsters, as Manju also pointed out, you need to ensure that that whole value chain, the ecosystem is stable, and there is some degree of certainty before you put your capital down. So that's important. I mean, just a couple of cases, if I may quickly highlight. One is on the R&D side. I think in improving productivity, one of the key things is research and development. Now, private sector also puts in quite a bit of money in doing this research and development. But the recent change to taxation is an impediment, meaning that earlier, if you spend on research and development, there was a double 300%, is it? Okay, 300% relief, it's deductible, right? But then it was taken off. So this sort of inconsistency, say you set up the infrastructure, you get into R&D, and suddenly these knee-jerk reactions, I don't think it really helps or gives in that confidence. So that's on the R&D side, but on the export side, I think there's a lot. We are also working with the government in terms of bridging that ecosystem. For instance, the cold chain is one of the things. I think there are a lot of areas where we can improve on that. Maybe later on I can touch on that element also, but there is infrastructure like the Damulla facility. I don't think it's being utilized at the moment. This is looked at during the World Bank, if I'm not mistaken, modernization. There was an Indian facility which has gone in. It's virtually built up. The racks are there. But I think we have been talking a lot about it, but I think the execution, getting the private sector companies involved, working with the government, and then linking up with the farmers so that they get a fair price, especially on the perishables and all that. And then you can manage your peaks and valleys in pricing as well in one of those. So the few thoughts where we can all, I think, collaborate and work together. Bottom line is in improving the productivity.
Thank you, Aroshan. Mr. Harshan, in terms of what Aroshan just mentioned, consistency in policy is something that actually every industry has been crying for. But in the journey that the government has set out now, I think accuracy and speed is also somewhat necessary in this journey of ours in the agriculture sector in transformation. In your point of view, based on what Aroshan also mentioned, what are the key takeaways that we can take from your experience in terms of getting that policy right, getting our accuracy right, but most importantly, how do we add some speed into this whole transformation?
So, speed is of essence. And in the morning session also, we heard that we have to involve all stakeholders. When we create a policy, so everybody's interest has to be intact in order to create the right policy. So that is going to help us to build a very strong and robust policy, whether it's a small term or long term policy which is there in place. but if everybody's interest is taken care of, the propensity of it getting success will be there. Now, coming to speed, accuracy and speed. So I think we are in a world where the digital technology is at next level, right? So while framing policies, be it agri or allied or beyond that, we should be, cognizant of the fact that there's a technology which is there that is obviously more accurate as compared to what it was 10, 15, 20 years of back. It has the power of doing at a very high speed. The turnaround time becomes very less on whatever initiatives we do, right? So how do I leverage the digital technologies in order to develop the policies which are more reliable, accurate, and time-driven, right? That becomes critical. It's just not the policy, right? As I was talking about, if we are looking to build entrepreneurship and targeting global markets for export, we need to be compliant, right? For compliances also, we need to have technologies in place. It could be something as simple as precision farming by using of digital technologies, IoTs, big data analytics, or it could be something like blockchain, right, for end-to-end traceability. So I think now is the time to integrate technologies in all the policies that we create, right? There are subsidy schemes that are there at the farmers, right? And how do I ensure that the money reaches to the farmers in the right time? Can we have real-time bank transfers? Quoting an example of India where there's something called DBT, direct beneficiary transfer, where the money directly goes within seconds or fractions of time by integrating. Somebody in the morning also was mentioning about unique digital information IDs. So if we have that, biometric authentication can be created, and all those transactions can become more transparent, they can become faster, and the reach is tremendous. Like within, as I said, within fractions of seconds, we are able to reach out to the beneficiary.
Thank you. Manju, I will, the next question is to you. You're doing a lot of work globally as well in terms of R&D. So with your experience, how do we approach the integration of innovative technologies, research into agriculture practices? And how do we create an ecosystem that encourages that and then subsequently leverage on those innovations to ultimately help the agriculture sector?
Yeah, so here I'll try to put a simple ladder between the top level policy making and the bottom level science technology interventions into agriculture. Now, if you consider agriculture, I'm not trying to teach a lesson here, but try to understand in a different perspective. Now, if you take agriculture as a complete process, you have inputs, you have a process, you have output. Every sector in agriculture, that's the same. You have inputs, you have a process, you have an output. A particular output is going to be an input to another process, then the process, then the output. So you input things until you convert that, whatever the inputs into money, it is a cascaded system. Now, if you take real agronomy, you have multiple inputs. You have agrochemicals, you have water, you have fertilizer, XYZ, including manpower. In the process, you have mechanization, you have soil, you have sun, you have everything. Then your output comes into the picture, you produce. Then in the post-harvest scenario, your produce is going to be the input. Then you have your post-harvest technologies, post-harvest systems. Then you have an output from that, and you sell it. Again, once you sell, it's a marketing and sales network. You have the input after the post-harvest control. Then you have a marketing sales network as a process, and you sell it to the end user. This is the cascade we are talking about. Now, in this cascade, in every point, you can nicely see voids, blanks, and in the needs to be fulfilled. I'll talk mostly towards the agriculture inputs and how to mitigate problems in that area. Then I'll try to touch upon the output of that section before the post-harvest part of it. Now, fertilizer, agrochemical, Then application of fertilizer, agrochemical, and how to apply and when to apply is a big question mark in this country. There are government entities to set recommendations, rules, policies, everything, but farmers don't do that properly. That is one of the major reasons for us to complain about low yields, high cost of production, various other malpractices basically contributes into that. Now, how to do that is a huge question mark, including, starting from seeds, as doctor mentioned, how to produce proper seeds, how to recommend proper fertilizer, proper agrochemical combinations for that particular seed, and how to recommend those seeds and those packages into the proper agroclimatic areas, and what are the variations, though everything should come into the picture in this particular area. So in that, there's a success triangle I have already defined, which is the academia, Department of Agriculture, and the private sector. Basically inside this triangle, you have the farmer. So academic inputs, academic research outcomes should go into the Department of Agriculture mainstream. They should validate. That knowledge should transfer into the farmer as well as to the private sector. Private sector should intervene into this, import or formulate solutions to go into the farmer. That is the critical pathway, and we have a lot of unbridged areas between these places. There are no proper bridges created in most of these areas. Those are the main problems. We can do research. We are researchers, and I played a couple of hats. I play a role as a researcher, and I play a role as an administrator as well as a manager in agrochemical and agriculture company. I've been working, and my colleagues, my gurus are here. So now I'm very happy to say that now when I was touching upon agriculture 20 years ago, agriculture research, the journey is now getting perfected. We develop new things in Sri Lanka, right? So I'm very happy to tell you that all the agriculture companies from 1 to 5 are very tech savvy, trying to do new things. So with that, these new things should properly go into the farmer with the academic touch, right? So academia, a couple of universities and agriculture research centers are trying to come up with their research, but outcomes are not being utilized properly to boil down those findings to the farmer. It is not only the extension officer's work. It has to go into another level. Extension officers are not 100% tech savvy or basically conversant enough to take these technologies, to simplify it and go and talk to the farmer. So these gaps should be nicely bridged. Otherwise, we are doing new research, we are getting down into new agrochemicals, fertilizers, new techniques, new machinery, but it won't go into the farmer properly. Now, in this process, input, process, then the output. In the process, also, farmers are not listening properly. So you should do something, either government or the private sector, we should do something differently for these farmers to understand this jargon we are talking about. Otherwise, they do whatever they want to do. Yesterday, someone talking me, sir, you all are telling us to spray this many liters per hectare, but we are only spraying 1/3 of that. And they are complaining it is not working. They don't know why these things are happening scientifically. You should be in a position to someone in the sector, in this particular cycle, should be in a position to go and teach them better than the extension officer. That's number one. Number two, we have multiple digital platforms in this country, operated by a couple of different entities. But it has to be at least one, or the interconnection should be there. So as he mentioned very nicely, the seeds, the inputs, then the soil conditions are, let's say, measured, reported by one platform. Then there are other platforms. Those platforms teach farmers the diseases, the deficiencies, XYZ. Then there are other platforms where you teach farmers to talk to their buyers and linkage of that. Then there are some other platforms, financing, financial support. Those platforms are not interconnected. As far as we don't interconnect those platforms, the person who's going to get the The problem is the farmer, not the benefit. He is facing problems because he is completely clueless about the system. He is trying to operate one end without knowing the other end. Okay, you go and apply for a loan, farmer loan, not knowing the behavior of the market. So these mismatches are everywhere in this sector. So when it comes to these cascaded processes, agronomy to process to output to post-harvest to marketing to sales and making money, if we are in a position to have a single spotlight organization, either a private sector organization or semi-government organization or the government, as far as we don't have that kind of a integrated problem solving or a observation network, we are not going to go anywhere. And research outcomes should come into the farmer fast. Yeah, government organizations, research centers, and specific organizations are giving us support. We have no doubt about it. It has to be much more efficient than the current system, right? So whether it is an imported fertilizer, whether it is imported agrochemical, or locally produced, locally assembled, or locally integrated fertilizer or agrochemical, it has to be on fast track. Otherwise, in the competitive world, we are not in a position to sit and wait for a couple of cycles. It has to go into the farmer with the proper quality, with the proper environmental and financial backing. Otherwise, private sector won't go put more money into research. If the realization is not there, as a private sector, I play two hats, as I told you. I put money and I do research, so I can do that. But most of the private sector agrochemical companies or agriculture companies or any company in that case, they need to earn money. So their intervention or their research should go immediately into the action without any delays, otherwise people won't invest. So those are the vicious cycles we are facing. Those are the success stories also we are facing. Bridging them together, getting rid of vicious cycles is a part of private sector and the government sector. So until that, we will be going on a slow run.
Thank you, Manju. Just a kind reminder to the audience to answer the poll question that was put up earlier. So one final question to the audience. I would like each gentleman to answer prior to us taking the questions from the audience. Finally, in order to attract global investments and high net worth individuals, multinationals, keeping multinationals in country without them exiting, so on and so forth, in the ecosystem of agriculture, what can we as a private sector request from the government is the first question. And Doctor, from your end, what are the initiatives from your side to attract and keep such high net worth individuals, organizations, and multinationals in country to support the agriculture sector? I will start from you, Doctor, and then I will move over to the private sector.
Yeah, while endorsing Mr. Manju's remarks, actually, that is the correct, that the research is the huge investment. Research R&D on agriculture is a risky, and also it is a very the heavy investment. But we feel that there is some kind of the weaknesses when we are getting this research output into the system. There is a previously actually this R&D for agriculture and other things, so everything done by the government. Then government have it set up how they can recommend it, then went to the farmers or stakeholder, end user. But thing is now private sector have come forward, and now we want to revisit these procedures, how we can immediately take up these findings and go to the farmers to get the benefits. One thing is the benefit for the farmers, second thing is they have invested, they should have a return for the investment. Therefore now, for many things we have relaxed actually. Now seeds, we have a system for the registration recommendations. Then the agrochemicals, we have a system for getting the agrochemicals, but there is some kind of the anomaly, because certain kind of the agrochemicals are provided by the principals. Then we we treat alike for all the products. In general, general protocol is there, we treat alike, but we should have a kind of the different models to treat different products. Suppose when we are releasing some kind of products from the trustworthy importer, there is a green channel. Similarly, we should have kind of the R&D sector also, when it is backed by the better R&D team, then it has to go immediately to the market. That is we are thinking, and also now we are planning to mobilize our scientists with the private sector scientists to do together collaborative work. And ultimately, our one weakness I should mention here, that royalty. How royalty should be shared among the private sector and the public sector. There is no such kind of, sometimes we don't have the Variety Protection Act implemented. It is on the way. Then some of the giant the organization, private sectors from the elsewhere are reluctant to come to the Sri Lanka for investment because they are afraid about their products. Somebody will drop it and they know where to go. That type of things are there. Then, but we are now, ministry has taken immediate action to get implemented that plant variety protection net. Then private sector can come forward and bring the material here, because from the beginning to end, doing the research is huge investment, but there are kind of the research outputs elsewhere and get here, multiply it and distribute among the farmers and also for the exportation. Because here we have a knowledge, we have a kind of the labor, we have the people to invest. Therefore, certain kind of products we can come here and multiply here if the better policy environment is there. Policy and regulatory environment is there, but we are trying to bring that policy and also regulatory environment that is benefited for the private sector. Then one thing also, actually the private sector can come forward and discuss with me what is their requirement. We are more than happy to help each and every the private sector, so that even certain things we don't know, what kind of the assistance is required from the ministry department side. Therefore, in future, I'll make the open request from the private sector, come and meet us, and we can have a very good interaction, and we are trying to facilitate the private sector.
Thank you. So maybe Arsha, very quickly, maybe within a minute for each person, how can we attract these, high net worth individuals, organizations, so on? Yeah.
Thanks, Rajiv. I think stemming from what Dr. Tushara said, few things. Policies, I think, are given. Now we have discussed about that. And in terms of the R&D side of it, two specific angles which I would see from not only at CIC but in my past experience also. One is the capacity building at, with all due respect, at the government level, meaning to really do that research a bit faster. For instance, I think yesterday His Excellency the President highlighted about public sector being bloated, but at the same time he said crucial positions are not filled. Yeah. I think these crucial positions, end of the day, impact most of the private sectors, the agility and doing things faster. For instance, getting maybe blends, formulations, protocols, approved. So you need to build capacity faster in those areas, because so, as Manju said, where the whole value chain works in a streamlined process manner. So that certainty to any MNC or anyone coming in will give in further confidence. The other aspect which I want to touch on is the rules and the regulations, and that's from my past experience where I was involved in a dairy project, is where some of the protocols, the health protocols, you need to revisit these things. We are an island, right? End of the day, and if you're bringing cattle from Australia or New Zealand, they have very strong health protocols. But we also need to understand that whether we are in line with the moving world, the evolving world, whether we are in line with those protocols. Because if you put bulletproof cover, those markets are not going to respond to us because we are a tiny dot. They send to US, Europe and all that. That's on the cattle side. But even the quarantine laws, I think there are a lot of experts. If you visit our quarantine laws, some of, I was made to understand, I think from Latin America. I don't think from the entire Latin American area, I don't think you can bring seeds, right? So that was an old law, an archaic law. But have we revisited some of these things? Are we in line, in touch with what's happening in the rest of the world? Thailand, Vietnam, all these things we talked, they also took certain calculated risks. So I think capacity building, relooking at some of the rules and regulations is an important thing. I can elaborate more, but I know we are running short of time, so I'll just pause there.
Thank you. So capacity building and being open is a suggestion. Manju, very quickly, 1 point, 2 points on that same topic.
Very quickly, again, just a simple continuation. It is a simple phenomena called Q squared dot. 2 Qs and DOT, quality, quantity, delivery on time. It's valid for each and every value chain segment I just mentioned. So if we can maintain that with our R&D, with our importation policies, with our government policies, quality products, quality inputs, quality XYZ, proper quantities, and delivery on time to the respective segment. Right? Most of the times we are facing problems. Urea is not there to start the Kanne. Kanne is just about to come, but this fertilizer is not there. Since we don't have this cascaded decision making while we are doing cascaded process, always we are facing problems. Though it is a new product or very conventional urea sort of a product, still we are facing problems, right? Have been importing the same thing from ages, number one. Number two, basically it is the optimization as well as the smoothness of the service and the flow. Number two, utilization of funds for that particular correct application. We are getting funds, we are getting project money, we are getting most of the things to agriculture sector. Are we utilizing this money to get the maximum out of that particular funding is another question. So I can remember for last 20 years, there were huge projects came, World Bank projects, X project, Y project, but a lot of money came into the system. But have we realized this money is another area to be evaluated, number one. Number two, if it is not, how to utilize the future money or the future funds into correct areas in agriculture is that. So just to finish it off, we talk about agriculture, we talk about everything, but we don't emphasize much about the soil quality and the environmental and the nature-based aspects. We are going to face problems in the future. Be ready with that. We are going to face huge problems. If you are not innovative and if you are not in a position to think out of the box, we will be facing bigger problems where we might not be in a position to resolve overnight. Thank you.
Harsha, from your side, to attract the exporters from foreign, any thoughts from your side on the same topic?
Can you repeat the question?
So I was asking how can we, attract and be partnered with, global players, bringing in good FDIs, good investment into the country. So from an export perspective, any thoughts on that?
Yes, to get some investment to the country. Except personally, we have pitched our project proposals through all the government bodies and some kind of to find some angel investors. Yeah. So the thing is, we can through that system, we can through some government. So find some angel investors. Yeah. For our investment, we can pitch properly the mainly agriculture sector. We have more opportunities in agriculture sector in Sri Lanka. So we could be able to go with the proper project plan. Yeah. with our the enhancing the value-added supply chain, and also we can get the benefit of our country, the geographically, and have a lot of we can get a lot of benefits through that.
Sure.
So I decided to that it's best to go through that kind of facts to get some investments.
Thank you. Ms. Harishanda, I will come to you last after the questions, and I will ask you to close the session. So before that, I would like to open the for any questions from the audience, if there are any. Yeah, questions are online. So maybe, okay, I will, I will ask the first question that is there. So how can the government fertilizer subsidy be used to gradually increase the use of efficient and new generation fertilizer to increase yield and productivity? If anybody wants to take this question up, please.
No, actually now as the new policy, this the fertilizer subsidy, as the money, it will be deposited on the farmer's account. There is the farmer having their own choice for the whatever the fertilizer. There is the recommendation from the Department of Agriculture. Even there is a kind of the packages from the different private sector. Whatsoever, the farmer having their own selection choice for the use of the fertilizer. But our concern is, our main concern, the input should be used judicially. That is our concern. There is a guideline, but private sector having their own responsibility to advocate farmers to use their products, their molecules in a very effective manner.
Thank you. One last question from the audience. There are many key issues regarding this. Number one, intermediaries in the value chain, post-harvest wastage, poor market linkages. What are the solutions for these issues? I will let maybe starting with Aroshan, Manju and yourself to answer that question.
Yeah, post-harvest losses, I think I was just starting on that Dambulla project. In terms of, see, you have to relook at the value chain, right? It can't be only one private sector company. As an industry and along with the government, we need to reactivate some of these projects. I think a lot of it, it's there lying on shelves and in plans and all that, but our execution hasn't really happened. I mean, today if you go to Dambulla, some of the vegetables are on that Habarana road on one side, and it attracts elephants. There are environmental issues and so on, right? So we can easily, mitigate, move away from this if you really activate some of the cold chain operations which are there, and then you talk to the farmers along with agri-tech and all that. You tell them what to plant at what point in time, so that even the perishables and the longer where there's longer life in certain vegetables, you can put them in these things, and then peaks and valleys don't come into play in terms of the pricing side. Again, on I think the value chain, a lot of it in agriculture, I think there's a lot of emotional attachment to agriculture. So sometimes rational decisions are not made. If you want to really make a transformational sort of change, I think we need to get to the fundamentals. End of the day, you look after the subsidy, those in poverty, as I said, who want to come out of poverty to do agriculture, more like subsistence. You look after them. You need to have safety nets like the Aswasimas and all that. But the rest of it, I think you need to revisit once again that whole value chain and really understand, do we really need all those touch points? Can we be more efficient, more productive? I mean, just like the seeds and the inputs which are coming in, and revisit those things. Those are hard decisions. And sometimes you need to have the political will also to make sure things happen. I think we have been discussing a lot in the past, but I think execution is where most of the things have sort of fallen short. So my view, I think you need to revisit and really understand whether these things are needed, and also whether it makes you competitive. End of the day, if you're looking at exports, see, you can't, you have to see whether there's a comparative advantage. The rest of the world is moving in a certain way, so you can't just be in a kind of a narrow mentality and think that, yes, okay, now we need to export and so on. That's not going to work. So you've got to look at your entire production costs, energy, so on, and getting the young people into agriculture. And make it more, how do I say, a business model with a return on investment which attacks FDI as well, and where you play in a niche. We are an island, so we can't get scale like what Harish mentioned about India in a certain sense. But we can do certain niche things, like the low GI rice, for instance. I can explain on CIC what we are doing. So that's a niche segment which are trying to export. You're targeting health varieties and specialty varieties of rice and so on. So I think we need to look at niche export operations, and those are the aspects which I highlighted. Thanks.
Thank you, Harsha. Maybe I will invite you to answer that question and close the session as well. Harish, thanks.
So I think the points have been mentioned. Only add that I would do is we need to have right infrastructure in place, right? If we have to reduce pre and post harvest losses. So when I say infrastructure, something as basic as storage facility at the farm gate level. In absence of that, a lot of wastage happens. Second, distress sales also happens. So access to storage is one. Secondly, access to price information system. Do I have access to, currently we have access to the farmers of the right price at which the product is being sold across different markets? If yes, then probably we are addressing a major challenge of distress sales and value losses, right? Third is in terms of creating infrastructure for value addition. With value addition, the propensity or ability to take risk increases, and it also reduces the losses. Right? Yeah.
So thank you very much, Mr. Harish. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen out here at Shangri-La, as well as the valued audience that have joined us online. Members of the panel, thank you very much for taking the time off to come and educate all of us on how we can transform the agriculture sector. So we will end the session with that, and have a good evening.